Let's go. The League of Women Voters want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a long road since we last met. The pandemic has been a challenging threat, and I think we've met it here in the Dungeness watershed with concern for others and lots of cooperation. Still, it's nice to see complete faces today. And I want to remind people that this is also the Imagine, what is it, Anne, help me. Imagine a Day Without Water, right. And actually our first lecture started a year ago on this date. And so we thought it was appropriate to bring back this update for you. We want to thank you for joining us. We have organized this meeting to offer an update on water issues from those who are on the front lines of preserving our watershed. It will be a while before we could conclude our lecture series in person. Depending on the coming months and the progress our community makes, we may opt to finish this series of talks online. I would much sooner do it in person, but we may, because I'd like to have it done by at least June. So I want you to look for another update in the early spring. We may do something similar here as we're doing now. And by that time, I think that it'll be a little more clear about what we can do. Okay, now I have to go through some technical information with the audience. Let's see here, I can't see this. I'm not here. Excuse me. Okay. This meeting will be recorded because we're going to post it finally onto the League website, so it'll be accessible to people. If you don't want your picture to show, you need to turn off your video. If you don't want your name to show, rename yourself. You can do this from the toolbar at the bottom of the screen or by clicking on Participants, which will open a window. Find your name, go to the right click on More, and then rename. We will keep all audience participants muted to help keep background noise to a minimum while the panel is presenting. And how we're going to proceed today is I'm going to introduce all the panel members right now. And I think most of them will be familiar to you. You've either seen them on the videos or you saw them in the lecture series. And then what we're going to do is each one has 5 to 7 minutes to make not an in-depth presentation, but an update on their particular area of expertise and what they're seeing. While that's going on, we want you to write your questions on chat because you'll have questions that come up as you hear each one. And we have someone monitoring chat. And at the end of their presentations, then we will have those questions read. And if we have time and more questions, then we can just do it online with you, live online. Okay, so right now, I want to introduce the people who will be on the panel today. And first we have Ann Soul, who's the Natural Resource Manager for the City of Sequim. And then we're going to have Ben Smith, who's president of the Dungeness Water Irrigation Association. He was one of our speakers, as Ann was. Then we have Joe with us today, which is really good. Joe Holtrop is executive director of the Callum Conservation District. And today we have a new face, and Tristana Suggs. She's the natural resources person in the Jamestown Tribe. And Latricia, you may give us your real title because I wasn't clear about that. Cathy Lee is here, and she was I hope you remember from the film. She's a habitat biologist for Callum County Natural Resources. And finally, Marcus Osias, our Callum County Commissioner for District 1, has also taken out time to be with us today to give a special update. So we welcome you all, and let's start. Anne, would you kind of give us an overview?
Sure. Okay. Yes, it's great to be here and on another Imagine a Day Without Water. Hard to believe it was a whole year ago that we kicked this whole series off, but here we are. So I wanted to talk about how the water year went, the 2020 water year, because, you know, the water year goes from October 1st to September 30th. I'm kind of assuming that everybody here today has been to a lecture or somehow got our email, got on our list, and we're going to sort of launch you from where we started you, rather than going back to the beginning of a lot of background on Dungeness water. But so in Squam we had well over 20 inches of rain. So as you know, that is much more than average, and of the relative to about the 16 to 17 inches we normally have. In the mountains, we had a decent snowpack, even though overall precipitation, because up at the Snowtail site, up in the upper Dungeness, it measures the rain and the snow. That total only came to 85% of the long-term normal for that site, which is about a 20-year record. So we had more than average rain down here and less than that period of time up high. It was a decent snowpack though, and it didn't melt out too early. So things went relatively well, I would say. I wanted to show how that snowpack related to the, see, I need to share my screen, relates to the river flow. So I will give you a technical graph for the moment. I can run through this. This is the water year as expressed in the Dungeness River flow. Can you see my cursor? Okay. So here's the winter season. October 1st is at this point of the graph, and here we have through March 1st, the winter season. The river flow had a couple peaks. Those were probably at the time of the biggest storms. Down here in December, when it was really low, we had a dry period, but we also had some cold weather, and the cold weather also keeps the river flow down, because the snow stays frozen and it's not running off. We're getting precipitation, but it's not resulting in flow in the river. So here's the end of winter and the beginning of the snowmelt season, which looks like it started in April as usual. And the snowmelt brought the river flow back up again. And we had, you know, a good amount of snowmelt. All of this, what you would call area under the curve, is the water that came out of the mountains and contributed to the river, which also contributes to the aquifer, as we've told you before. But we have a pretty steep decline here in late summer of the snowmelt basically running out, the snow running out. And we were fortunate to have a spike here in the river flow right at the end of September. We had a deluge, which really shot the river flow up, as you can see, just like a winter storm would. But this red line is the 180 cubic feet per second bar, which is what biologists would like to see in the river in that late summer time. So you can see we went down below it. I should say salmon biologists that are hoping to keep conditions good for fish. So that's how the water year looks, but I do have a quick description of the salmon, how it turned out for salmon. Last week at the Dungeness River Management Team meeting, we had a report from Aaron Brooks with the Jamestown Tribe, preliminary 2020 numbers for the Dungeness River. He also went into some 2019 and other streams too. He noted that the COVID pandemic interrupted some of the monitoring, so their counts aren't going to be quite as accurate for 2020. But here's some notes for the Dungeness. The Chinook returns look decent, fairly close to the moderate return that was forecast. Hatchery coho are coming in earlier than in recent years since we had some storms in early October. Everybody's hoping it will be a good year for the hatchery coho since the first return since they released 50% more than normal fry a couple of years ago. So it's too early to tell on the final numbers for hatchery coho. Let's see, summer chum were observed in the river this year by snorkelers, and this is not a run known to exist in the Dungeness. So they might be strays from other streams or remnant of historic summer chum. They're getting some genetic samples, trying to get genetic samples to learn more. Last year, the hatchery coho run turned out to be the lowest in 10 years. The wild coho run was extremely low, as it has been for several years. And then last year, the pink run was medium low, and that's odd year only. So it was kind of typical, but very unlike the huge runs that were 10 times that big that came along in 13 and 15. So that's the salmon summary. I guess just a really quick look ahead to 2021 water year. They're expecting us to have a La Nina year, which would be colder than the El Nino and potentially drier. So that's as much as I can say that I've heard of about what's coming. So that's it for my summary. I don't remember who's after me. Oh, Ben?
Hi, everybody. Hey, can I defer to Joe? I think he has to leave for a meeting at 12:30 again.
Sure, I guess. Not sure what you want me to talk about, but I can say that the Conservation District implemented a big irrigation ditch piping project this year with the Squim Prairie Tri Irrigation Association. That was down Evans Road, and about 2 miles of ditch were replaced with pipeline. Also about 2/3 of a mile of shallow aquifer recharge system were installed as part of that project. And we anticipate the savings of at least 1.5 cubic feet per second from that project. That was the big water conservation project we did this last year. Anything else I should talk about, Ben?
Nope, you are brilliant. Sorry, I figured that you were ready for a couple of key spots. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus there. I promise.
No, that's all right.
Great.
Yeah, I have to leave in 10 minutes. So.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. Carol, I see you talking a little bit, but your mute is on.
Okay. No, that's fine. Go ahead. I would.
Oh,
go ahead.
excellent. Okay, so Ben Smith with Water Users Association. So let's see, from the ag kind of end of things, I can say the irrigators were a little surprised by our low flow towards the end of the season this year. I was a little overly optimistic with my farmer gut feeling with what the snowpack looked like last year and the snow or the slow melting in the early summer. We were feeling way more confident than what we ended up with. So we had to do a little curtailing between the different companies and districts at the end of the season to maintain our requirement of not taking more than 50% of the river or 62.5 CFS. So we were, but everything went relatively smoothly. Besides that kind of little bit of surprise at the end of the season. And Oh, and Joe mentioned the piping project there, and I would just like to also reiterate that we're feeling awful well positioned with the current infiltration systems that we have in place now, and their disbursement through the WIRA as far as meeting the goal of the water rule and our ability to kind of replenish the different creeks in different areas with domestic use. So we're feeling pretty comfortable right now with our current array and how the amount of system or the amount of water that the individual areas are accepting. That's kind of a moving target a little bit. You know, we will install in one area, and we're surprised in the first year of one of the infiltration runs that it was taking surprisingly low amounts of water, but this year that increased, so we were happy with that. So they're kind of a little bit of a learning curve there as far as what our theoreticals end up matching, but all in all, we're feeling and we're in pretty good position to keep the water rule happy and healthy as far as that goes. Reservoir is kind of the next thing, the next big thing, current thing on our radar. We've been having some internal meetings with the irrigators on the east side of the Dungeness River, who will be basically the companies and districts who will be utilizing the water from the reservoir, and trying to identify some of the key issues. I feel we have pretty good, or we have good buy-in with the concept of the reservoir and moving forward with that project. But now we're at the stage where we're talking about specifics and how it will actually affect the different companies and districts. And a couple of the major concerns that have come up that we need to work through are water quality. And one issue is now that we've put the proposition of bringing the stormwater into the reservoir, basically that changes the kind of the flavor of the water quality issue, where before we were delivering, let's say, pristine river water to our customers. Now we're delivering a certain amount of stormwater, or will be, to our customers. So there's definitely concerns about that. And are we, you know, meeting our needs to our users by delivering them a altered product, for lack of a better word at the moment. So that's one key issue that's on the table for us. And I think the other main thing with regards to the reservoir is the ongoing operation and maintenance, how that will be handled, because, you know, basically all the companies and districts kind of run on a shoestring budget. So we're not able to basically have an easy source to come up with funds for that. So we're going to definitely be looking at to the outside community as a whole, and both the county and the state. And again, major there is we feel like the benefits of this reservoir are shared by basically the county and the state, because the bulk of it goes back to more water in the river for fish, which benefits, again, all citizens in county and state. So the irrigators are, you know, like, well, we can't go to our small group of customers and say, you guys have to foot the bill for this, when the benefits are basically going statewide. So those are some of our hurdles and challenges going forward. And let's see what else I missed on my list here. I think that's it. Oh, funding. So let's see, just a couple weeks ago, Carol Creasy at the county notified us that we received an extra $3.87 million from Stream Flow Restoration Act funds, and that would be designated towards construction. So up to date, we have about $4.1 million. which was last year's flow restoration funds. That went towards property acquisition and preliminary design. And then the second one of 3.87 will be primarily going towards construction. And I think that's it for my update. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's quite informing. Thank you. Okay, so now we go to Tristana Suggs from the Natural Resources Jamestown Tribe, and we welcome you. You're a real new person on our on our face here, so thank you for coming.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah, my name is Tristana Suggs. I'm the restoration planner for Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe. I've been with Jamestown since 2017. I've lived in Port Angeles almost all of my life, except for a short 3 years when I lived in Colorado and was going to school. I'm also a Jamestown tribal citizen. Prior to working for Jamestown, I used to work for Lower Elwha, 16 years on the Elwha River Restoration Project. So the project that I'm working on for Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe is along the Dungeness. Last year, the tribe and a North Olympic Land Trust and their LLC, Olympic Peninsula Conservation Resources, kind of banded together, and we went together on a partnership to acquire property along the Dungeness and the lower, between about River Mile, I think it's River Mile. Cathy might be able to, when she talks about it, give more accurate, but between River Mile, like 2.5 and 1 River Mile 1.5 to 2.5. It's about a mile length, or 0.9 tenths of a mile in length. But we worked together and we acquired about 104 acres of the prior, the McLean Wallaker Trust property. And then we also worked with the Browns to, for a partial acquisition of their property of about 24 acres. It was a pretty challenging project because there was a land swap that occurred. So for the partial acquisition where we purchased property from the Browns, they were able to swap that 24 acres for 25 acres of the McLean Wallaker Trust property. And so we had to work with the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office to make that conversion occur. But in the end, what happened, what resulted is a tribe ended up acquiring about 60, just under 65 acres of property, not right adjacent to the Dungeness River, but adjacent to the existing levee that is out there. And we thought it was a great opportunity to acquire that property and work with the county to benefit their federal setback project that they're working on north of where Dungeness Valley Creamery is located. So the tribe has kind of had in the back of their mind since back in 1997, they had identified in what we call their recommended restoration projects for the Dungeness River. You know, it was a book that was put together working with the Dungeness River Restoration Work Group, where they had identified, I'll read it right here. It's reestablish a functional channel and floodplain in the lower 2.6 miles through dike setback and constriction abatement. So this has been something that the tribe has visioned way back in 1997, and today it's 2020. So this is a vision that the tribe has had for these last 23 years, and it's finally coming to fruition through the first steps was land acquisition. And so we've acquired that. And our next steps is we are currently in kind of preliminary design to set back 0.9 of a mile of the levee. And as soon as we move from preliminary design, we will move to final design and permitting, the permitting shall, we'll submit a application to the Army Corps of Engineers back in January of 2021. That is our timeline. We'll submit a complete application then. But our project will benefit the county project and actually reduce the overall cost for the county for their construction project by eliminating some of their major construction hurdles, the spur dike and the bridge that would connect that spur dike to the main levee. But this project is, we acquired the property for habitat restoration. The goal is to be able to set back that levee and open up and reconnect 64 acres of floodplain to the Dungeness. So by reconnecting floodplain, you're providing areas for flooding to occur and for the river to migrate, to create side channels, to create, the bars that you may see in rivers, and but it's a great opportunity to start developing and looking at additional habitat that is needed, especially for the salmon runs that return annually along the Dungeness. So that's what the tribe has been doing with the River's Edge project. Since I've been on since 2017, and prior to me being on, Robert Knapp also worked as a restoration planner. And over the years, the tribe has acquired about 200 acres of floodplain along the Dungeness, and we've become land stewards. These properties have conservation easements on them, and that is what the properties will be used for, is just long-term conservation. The goal is to create habitat to kind of prevent development in channel migration zones, and to also to reduce flooding that might happen to people who currently live along the Dungeness. If we can provide alternate areas where flooding can happen, then we're hoping to see reduced flooding in other areas. So that's what the tribe has been doing with acquisition of properties along the Dungeness, and we continue to look forward to purchasing additional properties along the Dungeness, and the purchase of those properties would be for conservation.
Okay. Very, very ambitious. We're happy you're there doing this. It's really important. Okay.
Thanks, Carol.
So, that's moving along here is, next we have Cathy Lee, our habitat biologist from County Natural Resource. And she was featured in the film. And Cathy, you're going to give us an update on, you're going to do it on the levee, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So hi, everyone. I just wanted to give you some quick updates, and if I'm able to navigate the share screen feature, I'll put up a picture of the project on the lower Dungeness. I hope someday to have a picture that shows both the section that the county is working in and the tribe's River's Edge project, so you can see the whole. But this photo that I have is the county's. So I'm going to start share screen. We'll see how it goes. So there we are. Hopefully you can see a picture that says Lower Dungeness River Floodplain Restoration. It's a before and after set of images so that we can see what we're working with, and then we can see what the vision is. So on the left is what we're working with right now. And we're looking north to the bay, and I'm going to move my cursor, which is kind of funny, but the red line is the core levee that was built in 1963. It's a little over 2 miles, like about 2.5 miles. And I don't know if you can see this, but at any rate, the schoolhouse is where I'm circling with this funny little cursor. The river is really close to the levee is really close to the river along its length, and when it was built, it pushed water over onto the other property owners on the other side of the river, so they built levees. So the river is so constricted, it's like when you tighten up the nozzle on your hose, the river really rushes through here. One of the things it does, just from the standpoint of fisheries, if nothing else, it moves all the gravels around in the river at pretty low velocities, and crushes the eggs that the fish have laid in their redds. So of course that devastates the populations. So what our plan is to move that levee back. So I'm just going to be talking momentarily about the county project, but please know it also extends south for about another mile for the tribe's River's Edge project. So here's what we're doing. We're setting the levee back, not as far out as the yellow line on the right, but pretty close to that. And we're taking Town Road, which runs through that area, and a little bit north of Dungeness Valley Creamery, we're putting it up on the levee, moving it through the floodplain, and then it will come out and intersect at Squim Dungeness Way. So what that's going to do, just in the county portion, is reconnect the river with a little over 100 acres of its floodplain. A number of benefits from that are that the water will be able to move out into the floodplain during high water events and slowly percolate into the aquifer, as opposed to shooting through like in that tiny nozzle hose situation. And what we expect to have help, what that should help with is, as Ann mentioned, you know, in the summer we get those really low flows. Part of the reason for that is that the aquifer just doesn't have water to provide to the river. So we're expecting that slow percolation to be able to help with flows in this lower reach. So that's pretty exciting. And then if you can see this very faint, Latricia, I'm going to try to show folks where so the Tribe's River's Edge project will have additionally, if you follow the line going south, we'll have more floodplain. There's about an extra mile of levee that will be set back, and another 60 acres for the river to be able to access.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's what's happening in terms of design status. People ask about walking on the levee because it is beloved of the community. And I just want to really acknowledge the fabulous stewardship that the community provides for the area, very careful with the levee and taking care of its surroundings. So there'll be parking available in this area that isn't really available right now. Everyone has to park along the road. And then you'll be able to get up on the levee and walk to the south. And then up in the north, there'll be a way to get up on the levee here and walk. Once you meet up with Town Road, there'll be a shoulder, but it's not a trail. Sadly, we had visions of trails, but in our permitting work with the Corps, we have had to let those go for the moment. So there'll still be walking opportunities here and bicycle riding opportunities. In terms of what's happening, we are still working with the Corps on getting our 404 wetland permit, but that does look like it's coming in the next couple of months. We have one permit issued from the Corps, which sounds so boring, but is actually exciting for us. And we are very much hoping to see the first phase of construction happen next summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. It looks like we're making progress as we go down the road. And I know that people are really concerned about having access. I'm one of the walkers out there, and it's a really, really wonderful asset in the community. Appreciate your thoughtfulness in this. Okay, so now we're going to go to Mark, and I think he is going to give us more information about the off-channel reservoir that is being planned by the county. So Mark?
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Carol, and thanks for inviting me today. I'd like to note that I'm standing in for the county's project manager, Carol Creasy, who is the true expert on the reservoir. But Ben provided a little bit of an update. You know, a big project like this is not as straightforward as we might like. There are a lot of balls to move forward, and we're sort of trying to move them all forward at the same time. And so it's not really a linear project. So in terms of funding, as Ben mentioned, the project did receive about $4 million worth of funding last year that has helped us to really kick off the design and planning work. We were just awarded earlier this month an additional almost $3.9 million from the same program, the Stream Flow Restoration Program at the Department of Ecology. And as Ben mentioned, those funds will be able to apply to construction of the reservoir once we get to that point. We've also applied for a number of other grants, some that are still out there right now. One is a FEMA grant, and we've been asked to submit a full application after submitting, sort of the initial piece. So, that's potentially good news. And we also have a request into the Floodplains by Design program, and that's a program that takes projects from around the state and ranks them, and then the legislature determines what the appropriate amount of funding is, and a certain number of projects on that list get funded and some of them don't. Right now, the reservoir project is ranked at number 15, and as the budget stands now, the cutoff on that list is somewhere between project number 12 and 13. So, that there's a potential there, but I'm not sure if that particular one is likely. That being the case, we do have plenty of funding for all of the work that we need to do right now. And most of that has to do with making sure that the location that we've identified is the right space. And so we are working with the Department of Natural Resources on an agreement to purchase 2 parcels, which total just shy of 400 acres off of River Road. And the work that we're doing right now involves geohazard and seismic studies of the soil, an environmental assessment, and a cultural resources survey to make sure that there won't be any surprises that would be traumatic and detrimental to the program. And so once all of that work is complete and we're satisfied that the site that we've located is in fact going to work as intended, then we'll be able to complete the acquisition of that land, which is currently owned by the Department of Natural Resources, and which will ideally ultimately be owned by Clallam County. So as we're working on that, Ben also mentioned we're starting to get to the point in the process where we're working through the details, and so it's expected that there are going to be some details to work through. There are a lot of partners in this project, which is one of the reasons that makes it so compelling. It's also one of the reasons that makes it complex. So right now we are in communication with all of the project partners, state agencies, the irrigators here locally, the Conservation District, the county, the city of Sequim, the Jamestown Tribe, and others, to make sure that we all have a shared sense of what our own roles and responsibilities ought to be, and agreement on what others' roles and responsibilities are. And of course, we'll be crafting a memorandum of understanding or something similar that encapsulates all that. And we're really working very hard and specifically with the irrigators. Ben highlighted some of the concerns that the irrigators have related to water quality, and how's the operation and maintenance going to work. And certainly, the county and all other partners share those concerns, and I'm confident that we will be able to address those in such a way that we're able to move forward with the project. None of what we're talking about is a surprise. So there's a lot of research going on right now about how other similar reservoirs work, how the operations and maintenance component is handled, and looking into how we can work with the irrigators to ensure that the water quality is as anticipated, etc. And then finally, we're working at the beginning stages of working on modeling using stream flow and irrigation water usage and rainfall, etc., to really help us zero in on how the reservoir will actually function. In other words, will it fill up with stormwater early in the year, which is then deployed out for aquifer recharge, fill up a second time with river water, which is then stored for a couple of months to benefit the irrigators? Might it be different in different years depending on how much snowpack and moisture there is? We need to do that modeling to really help us see how the actual reservoir itself will function. But the project overall is moving forward on all fronts. I'm really excited to be at the point in time when we are, when we're actually getting down into the nitty-gritty details. While that can be a little bit stressful because some things are hard to work through, it also means that we're at the point in this project where the rubber really meets the road. So with regard to public engagement, I expect that starting in 2021 and moving forward, there will be a lot of opportunities to engage the public, both to help see how the design and engineering is coming along once we get to that stage, so that we'll be able to provide information out and solicit input from all of you out there who are interested in tracking what's going on. And then there will be an entirely separate public process that doesn't relate to the reservoir and the functioning of the reservoir itself, but to the projected county park that will surround the reservoir. And that's something that obviously we'll want to take time to understand how folks would like to see that space evolve. So anyhow, I think that's an overall update, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions that folks might have when we get to that part of the presentation. Thank you, Carol.
Okay. All right. Well, we've had our presentations and a lot of information in a short period of time, but I'm really, because I went through the first part of the process, been in this for about 4 years now, or starting the 4th year. It's pretty exciting to see what our county is doing and the people working. I think the people working together is really such an extraordinary event. So we're going to go to questions now, and I have some tech people that I need to recognize and working with us to make this thing work, and that's Bonnie Bless Bamish and John Stednick and Silas Cruz, who made the film, by the way, a wonderful film. So John, did you get some questions through chat?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions. One of the questions was, what is the plan, or are there plans to use the dike material somewhere else? So when they remove the levee or the dike down below by the schoolhouse, is there plans to use that material, or how will that material be handled?
Yeah, Kathy. You're unmute. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, so we certainly plan to use the material as much as possible if it meets current standards. And so our idea is, now that we're working on being able to, if you will, sync up both the schoolhouse part of the project and the river's edge part of the project, so that we're working together. And in that way, we would be able to use material from the levee to build the river's edge part of the setback levee, like the new levee in river's edge could use material that we're excavating as we remove the old levee. So that's what we're aiming for right now.
All right, good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John?
So Ben, this may be a payback from Joe, I'm not sure, but how many more, or what's the future looking for additional piping of irrigation ditches? How many more? How much more recharge? What do you see on the horizon in terms of future water conservation measures as related to farming and irrigation?
You're muted.
You're still muted, Ben.
How about now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. So good question. We always feel like with as much piping as if we've done, that we've picked the low, easy fruit with all the piping projects we've done, but yet, you know, we still have a list out in front of us of projects that we can do for piping and water savings. On the east side, a fair amount of them are within Grace Marsh's zone of contribution. So the last two projects we've done, Grace Marsh has been willing to allow us to put in infiltration to protect the groundwater table at the same time that we're doing the piping projects. So we're confident that we'll be able to tick off more and work more in that zone of contribution area. Although I would say our limited number of options for piping and savings is on the downward trend, there's still more projects out there. And as far as recharge goes, again, we have a pretty good distribution of options right now, but as we move forward, our basic instinct is to, if we can efficiently put them in place now, it's going to help us with options and moving water around in the future. So we're meeting the needs of the water rule currently, so it's not high on the priority to go find more projects, but we do see installing them as the opportunity arises to leave us more flexibility in the future. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another one for you, Ben. A person commented that driving around town, they're seeing more properties being used for agricultural production. What is the status of can you comment on the amount of agriculture that's occurring in the SQUIM area? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? And how is that going to affect future water use?
I don't have exact numbers. I would agree there probably is a slight uptick in the small acreage farms, but I would definitely say there's not a uptick. I would say we're still having a net loss of agricultural farmable acres. But again, with the land trust and their programs, that's helping kind of curb that and sustain that going forward long term. And as far as water use, I don't see an increased water need going forward. My farmer gut says that as these smaller operations come into place, and unfortunately, you know, we're losing probably some of the larger farms which tend to utilize or use more water. I would say that the net requirement from the river to support ag is going to be either steady or trending down. I definitely don't see an uptick there.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
For Anne, given the continued population growth in SQUIM, is there a future point where we'll have to limit growth because of water availability?
Good question.
So, you know, I think that's a really popular question, and it comes up all the time. People want to know, you know, why are we still letting growth continue when we're running out of water? And so, you know, it's really not very politically popular to do that. So the State Department of Ecology is the agency who's got responsibility for making sure that all users of water have what they need. And that's why there's a whole process of granting water right permits to people that are new users of water. The city of Sequim is going to need more water rights at some point. Right now we have plenty for, 10 years at least, but the city of Sequim is going to keep growing, because that's probably the hope, is that we don't end up taking more farmland away and turning those into subdivisions, but trading the development into the urban areas, which means the city would be responsible for providing that water. So we are looking at possibilities for new water rights. The whole system of water rights is in the Dungeness has this added layer of mitigation. So now, since 2013, since the Dungeness rule passed, anybody who wants to use new water needs to mitigate for that use. In other words, mitigate the impact on senior water users and streams. So anytime when the city wants to drill a new well, if we are going to be impacting, whatever our impacts are going to be, those have to be mitigated. And there's computer models and mitigation calculators and whatnot that both the State Department of Ecology and the Dungeness Water Exchange use to decide how much mitigation is needed and where it needs to go. So, quick answer to the question is no. Nobody is going to say, I don't think there's going to be a time that somebody will say, sorry, we have no more water, nobody else can come. I mean, you could have somebody decide to collect rainwater and get a permit for their operation or their whatever they want to do. Anyway, let's not go into hypotheticals. Yeah, I would say we're not gonna, the government leaders are not gonna ever say, nobody else can come here, we're out of water, because there isn't necessarily an end to the water supply. It comes out of the sky, it comes out of the mountains. It's a matter of trading off, and that's the whole point of mitigation, is to make that trade-off so that it's more fair.
Okay. So in the chat, we see a nice shout out for the story of water from Rich, but let's open it up to the audience. Are there other observations that you all have observed or things that you've learned from the story of water that have a real life application for you or your family?
Yeah, I'd love to hear people's reactions to that one. I'll put my, since we're wrapping up, I'm gonna put my email in the chat just in case somebody wants to go into more detail on that.
Any questions from anybody? Panel members like to raise a question?
I would like to make another comment, Carol, if I can have the floor.
Sure.
Just to piggyback on what Ann was just saying, just to give some perspective. So when the water rule was in place, they were estimating about 2 CFS was the need, going to be the need for the next 20 years to cover the water needs for the development growth that would take place for the next 20 years. And as Joe mentioned, we did, or the irrigators and the conservation district did one piping project this last year, just finished the ones on Evans Road, that is going to save about 1.5 CFS. So again, some of these bigger projects, the lower hanging fruit, the leakier systems, where those are getting less, but yet I just wanted to give a little perspective on basically one piping project done this year, basically nearly covered the needs for the next 20 years of water, just for some perspective there on kind of the size and scope of things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, all right, well, here we are at 1 o'clock. John, you have any other questions? Or are there any other questions from the audience? Okay.
Yeah, I've
All
got
right.
none here.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, I want to thank everyone for contributing as much. It took a team of people to just put on an hour Zoom meeting, and all the people who cooperate. It's been my experience here that there's a great deal of cooperation over water. And I come from California where that is not the case. So it's really good to be part of a community that, you know, builds alliances and is looking so far into the future. I know it's daunting because the one thing we haven't talked about is climate change and what that is going to mean here. And there are other places on the North Olympic Peninsula where water is already in dire need at certain seasons. And so we're just really fortunate. We have a beautiful watershed and it's being protected. I'm really appreciative of the fact of all the people that have come together to do it. So with that, does anybody else have any concluding remarks or something they'd like to say? Okay, then I hope to see you soon, or at least in June, or in person, that would be nice. And we may have to do some Zoom finishing of the lecture series, because there's a little bit more to talk about here, okay? So thank you very much for coming, and all you who helped, and all you who were on the panel. I really appreciate it, and the League appreciates it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.